Guys, we are here at day 2, C2E2, and I have none other than Andrew MacLean joining us. Andrew is the creator of Head Lopper and Apocalyptic Girl. Andrew, thank you for sitting down with us.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Cool. I have my good friend Joe from Pull the Lever as well.
Me.
I'm Mark from the Chumpcast, and
I'm Smithers from the Chumpcast.
So, Andrew, can you talk a little bit about how you got started in comics? You're the creator, you're the writer, the artist. Was going into comics your thing, or did you know you just wanted to create these books?
Well, I knew when I was a kid I wanted to be a comic artist, but then I got distracted by music and guitars and friends and stuff. So it wasn't until after college that I just kind of fell back in love with reading comics, and I fell back in love with drawing, and I got obsessed with it. And so I started out just self-publishing. Head Lopper started that way. We would go to a zillion conventions just like this, print our own books, eventually do some Kickstarters and whatnot, and I did dozens of pitches and got dozens of rejections before anyone really gave me the time of day. But that's how it goes, and we just kind of stuck to it, and eventually, Dark Horse did Apocalyptic Girl with me, and then talking with Image later, they're like, hey, this self-published thing you've done for a while, like, do you want to keep doing it, but with us? And it was obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was introduced to your work in Head Lopper, and that's that heavy metal, savage, barbarian vibe. Where did you come up with that idea? Were you thinking about that for a while and were like, man, I really need to create something like this?
Well, it was a few things. It was like, I used to think about I think it was something like, it was like Hellboy 20th anniversary or something, and I was thinking again, like, I was a musician once upon a time, and I used to think like, oh my god, like these bands, they've got to play the same song every night if they're lucky for 50 years or whatever. And I was like, man, it's not so different in comics. You have to draw the same character over and over and over again, and then it's probably almost 30 years since Hellboy started now, but at the time I was thinking about Hellboy. I'm like, damn, like that's a lot of Hellboy drawing, so you got to really like that character. And around that time I just did this drawing. It was a themed drawing. It was a part of this like art blog, and I think our theme that week was maybe Viking or something. So I was like, I'm gonna draw, you hit the nail on the head. I was like, I'm gonna draw something just super metal, like it just to be really fun. And I had so much fun drawing it. I was like, it hit me. I was like, oh, this is something I could have fun drawing for a long time, over and over and over again. And it was a version of Norgal and Agatha, and so first I was like, yeah, I want to draw this warrior again, and but I like this witch head too. So I was like, how do I find a way to keep drawing this? And I was just like, oh, just what if it just talks? Like, what if it's just a character? And that's how it started. It wasn't, I didn't think I'd be drawing it 700 pages later or anything like that, but yeah, apart from that, I wanted it to be a high action comic. I wanted it to be a comic that was really metal, but still had nothing to do with music. And I was thinking a lot about the movies I would watch as a kid. I just wanted to be fun. So I was thinking about how much I loved watching, Arnold Schwarzenegger as Conan when I was a kid, or the 81 Clash of the Titans is still like those Ray Harryhausen movies had a really big effect on me. And so I wanted it to be that combination of like 80s fantasy movies and heavy metal, and we've been doing it for a while now.
Very cool. I love it. Well, my buddy Joe here has been a longtime fan of your work.
Absolutely.
Joe, I know you have a few questions for Andrew.
Yeah, I was super excited when I saw your Kickstarter for the Head Lopper RPG dice kind of like crossover. I've always thought that Head Lopper would fit really well into like an RPG tabletop setting, especially with the Crimson Tower, your second story arc. Me going through that, as a person who's played Dungeons & Dragons their entire life, I felt like I was reading like a classic dungeon crawl D&D module. And so when I saw your Kickstarter, I got super excited. And what I didn't realize was that you were creating all of your cast from Head Lopper as NPCs. Was that something like you had the idea of to kind of introduce them as like generic NPCs? Was it an idea someone brought to you?
The dice and the role-playing game stuff was something that someone brought to me, but I do feel like when I'm coming up with these adventures, I'm creating puzzles.
Yeah.
I do feel like I'm creating a game, because you have a story, but you also are trying to facilitate action, and they've got to solve things. So, while I have like no experience playing Dungeons and Dragons, it's a really small town. I didn't know anyone who played.
We can fix that, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
All right.
definitely.
Here we go. But so like, so you mentioned like the second volume, Crimson Tower. That one is heavily inspired by the dungeons in Zelda games. So yeah, and they're
amazing.
Even the dungeons, the levels, they feel like puzzles. The settings do, and so I thought of that with the Crimson Tower, because they kind of like, they have to go off into these other rooms and get these items that are basically keys, more or less, and then kind of return to the same place, and like the whole tower arena becomes this big puzzle. And I always felt like it was this kind of thing in Zelda games often, where you'd kind of enter that first room in the
You
in
try
the
one
dungeon.
door and it wouldn't work.
Exactly.
And you'd have to go to another room.
They
to-
make you
yeah.
go this way,
Exactly.
so you can get a key, so you can come back to that room and open this thing or whatever. So I am always thinking of it when I'm writing as like a game, as puzzles and whatnot.
And it definitely reads that way, and I cannot be more excited to grab my players with your NPCs and make them go through the Crimson Tower, almost page by page.
Well, that was something that was happening too. I was having people reach out to me and just be like, "Oh, I based a campaign on your volume 1 or your volume 2 or whatever." And so when Justin at Severed Books was like, "Hey, what do you think about making some dice based on Head Lopper?" I was just like, "Yeah, why didn't I think of that? That makes so much sense. Like the two already feel almost married together."
We were just waiting for the moment.
Yeah, right. I was like, yeah, of course, duh, yeah.
Do you have any plans for a volume 4 coming out?
I do, yeah. I'm just getting started now, so it's going to be called, if I remember right, I think I called it Head Lopper and the Quest for Mulgrid's Stare, which is, Mulgrid is this thing that I've kind of like mentioned in off comments in Head Lopper. I felt like going into Volume 3 was a big bookmark issue for me. I was trying to answer some big questions that people had, or some of the big questions they'll probably have at this point. But also, it was a ton of moving parts, and so I was exhausted after writing it and drawing it. So I was like, I'm going to try to do something a little bit more straightforward. So with Volume 4, I want to return. I always think of Volume 1 as being a kind of A to B adventure. It's very linear.
Right.
So I'm going to do another like linear adventure with them, where they from the start, they've got a goal. They're going to get derailed and they're going to get into shenanigans. But we know from what. The first issue of Volume 4, which is issue 13, you'll know where we're trying to get for the end.
I'm excited, and it feels like since the first story arc to all the way through the third, you've gotten way more into the world building aspect, introducing new characters, their personalities, and when we were talking earlier, you had mentioned you were kind of introducing a world map to your Head Lopper setting. Are you kind of trying to keep in mind like building new cities, new areas? Is that something that's in your head, or something that comes as you're writing and drawing?
Well, for starters, it was kind of comes as I was writing and drawing, and I had these big grand ideas, but they weren't as pertinent to those specific volumes. So each volume, as I've gone through it, I've zoomed out a little bit more, because you learn more about Norgal and Agatha. You learn more about whatever that setting is. Each time we've left our heroes and come back, they're in a new place. And so each time in my writing and figuring the thing out, I'm zooming out too.
Yeah.
And this is Volume 4, but they're long books, so I feel more zoomed out than ever before. So, and I know, and fantasy nerds love maps. It's like their favorite.
I mean,
thing.
yes.
Obsessed with maps.
Well, and it even gives people the freedom too, especially someone like me, heavy in the D&D setting, professional DM setting. If I had a map of your world, I could just start creating things myself too.
Totally, absolutely, yeah. And that for me, it was also like, all right, I'm doing bigger planning for the world now, and being like, all right, how many volumes do I want to go before I hit that touchdown mark, where it's like, a kind of a finale moment. And so with that, I was like, I want a map now more than ever. I want the map, so I can say they've walked here, 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 and here. let's make them visit all of Narshalon.
Yeah,
let's have them go everywhere and have even both me and the reader have an idea of where's our endpoint going to be, like literally on the map. And so, we're going into that now in Volume 4.
I am very excited to see that. Do you have any other projects on your horizon? I know I love Head Lopper. I'm all about it. But I'm a fan of everything else you do.
Yeah,
especially
appreciate it.
Apocalyptic Girl. Maybe anything coming from there.
Another
anything
book
in that
about
realm?
lopping heads, though. It's just perfect premise.
As long as you name it aptly, like if there's head cutting off, head lopper, good.
I know. I always joke that I kind of named myself into a corner. I'm like, I gotta have severed heads in
Can't
every
not lop
issue.
heads.
Yeah, that can't go away. With Dark Horse, we just wrapped up a second edition of Apocalyptic Girl, a hardcover. It's oversized.
Nice.
It's a really beautiful book, and I'm a real sucker for not putting anything out that has nothing new in it. So I did 2 new stories for it. There's an epilogue and a prologue, and then the first volume of it, or the first edition of it, didn't have any kind of back matter. It didn't have any behind the scenes character designs or whatever. So we scraped together as many of that stuff as we could, and we've stuffed it so full of everything Apocalyptic Girl. So we've got Volume 4. We've got another Apocalyptic Girl, and I have written a few things, but who knows when those will come to fruition, or if they will, for that matter.
Or you're just not telling us.
Yeah.
Suspense.
That's right. Off mic.
So I'm curious. Obviously, most of the things you do are super metal, but there's got to be something that you read or enjoy that is like Garfield or not metal at all.
Calvin
so
and
I'm really
Hobbes.
curious as to what that is.
Well, I still like cute, charming things. Certainly, yeah. It's not all metal. I mean, I think some of that shows up in my work too. There's a little cute characters, a little dumb characters.
The leaves
Yeah.
are just cute in itself. I love the leaves.
Well, but it's like I love Jim Henson stuff. So like the recent Dark Crystal, I think I've watched the whole thing twice. It's amazing. Like they still paid. I love handmade things. I love puppets and practical effects. So I'm like a huge old kaiju fan or whatever. So anytime there's things that really have that kind of human touch to them, puppets, stop motion animation, I'm all about it. But yeah, recently I was. The Dark Crystal, I mean, it has its dark moments, but it's pretty cute.
Not nearly as dark as just like lopping heads.
Yeah, way less. Although there was just a ton of like boogers and vomit and all kinds of stuff in it that was really fun too.
Do you have a favorite head lopping moment?
Oh no, I don't think so.
No.
That would be too hard to choose.
It's like your kids,
So
like
many
your
good
favorite child, like my favorite head lopping moment.
I don't know. One thing that I think of as being kind of nice and fun is, I think it was in Volume 2. It might have been the second. Would have been in the second issue of Volume 2. So in it there was we have kind of a set of trials. So in that issue we had Norgal and Agatha hanging out with Beak, the little almost babyish of the Funga brothers, and they kind of go under this kind of weird magical pond thing, and there's this very kind of abstract, I call it like a fungus monster that he fights. And I just really loved working and writing for that monster and that scene, because kind of where it was inspired by, which was, I think I heard a Radio Lab podcast where we learned about this fungus that basically supports forests. It basically says, if this tree is needs some, I don't know, water or whatever, or some chemical or whatever, this fungus would be like, let's get some potassium for this tree. I don't know if trees need potassium, but so this fungus sucks life and life-giving materials from all over the forest, and we'll bring it to certain trees or areas of need. And so I just loved that idea. I thought it was so cool. So that monster was based on that idea of if this fungus grabs, say in this case our heroes, it's gonna suck the life out of them and give it to this forest that's above ground, and so this forest gets, as it's sucking the life from Norgal and Agatha, the forest is blooming, and then of course when our heroes don't die, that forest kind of wilts or whatever. But yeah, that's one of my favorite things, just mostly because I thought that fungus was fascinating.
That's such a cool story. just like pulling things from the outside world and putting it into your work. That's got to be a really big inspiration. Can you give me like one more story of something that you saw, something crazy, and on an Animal Planet TV show?
Well, there's a lot of that. Yeah, I think when I think of, there's a lot of monsters in Head Lopper, and I think to myself, like, where do you get, inspiration from monsters? And I'm just like, well, like animals are monsters.
The real world.
Yeah, we're just used to seeing them, so they don't seem so strange unless it's like an octopus or something. So yeah, I often I'll do that. There's a monster in I guess it'll be 13. That's why it's so fresh in my mind. It's based on aquatic creatures. Like I look at fish a lot because they're weird. They're really weird. Yeah. So yeah, I do that all the time. I feel like if you're gonna do a lot of writing and really populate a world, that's just a lot of stuff to pull out of your brain from essentially nothing, from this kind of like the ether of your imagination or whatever.
You should pick up a Dungeons and Dragons monster manual. It's chock full of everything you need.
Well, yeah, exactly. You got to keep your eyes open because there's stuff everywhere, and you can kind of just collect it as you walk around. And just when you're like, shit, I got no ideas. What am I gonna do? There's something. If you've kept notes at least in your mind, you can pull from it later.
Awesome. Well, we are all looking forward to your work.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Where can everyone find your books, and are you on social media?
Yeah, social media is just my name. I am probably most active on Instagram. It's just Andrew MacLean. But yeah, you can get my books are pretty widely available. Comic shops, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. I definitely encourage people to go to your local comic shop to buy my books. It's still the lifeblood of our industry, and it's like I always think of it as like a nerd bar or a nerd barber shop or something where like people go in there and they actually talk and they share what they're fans of or whatever. And I feel like if it wasn't for comic shops and friends showing friends, Head Lopper, I don't know why.
I would not have been introduced without someone pointing me towards Head Lopper.
I spent 6 years managing a local comic book store, First Aid Comics, just down the street from here, and can't count how many Head Lopper volumes that I pushed out.
Yeah, and I appreciate it, and I hear that over and over again. So whenever I can, and someone's like, "Oh, where should I get it?" I'm like, "Get it in a shop. Go in there. Like you'll probably find something else you love too."
Well, thank you for your time. Thanks for sitting down with us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, everyone. Well, this has been the Chumpcast. We are at Podcast Central the rest of the weekend. Come follow us for more con coverage. This is hosted by the Chuckload of Comics YouTube channel, as well as us. But until next time, Chump side.